Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 303 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, alumni mentorship is the single most important factor in fraternity and sorority chapter success. The alumni have expertise, resources, connections that will enable your chapter to stand the test of time. If you don't already have a chapter director or an alumnus that is working with your chapter on a weekly basis at your chapter meetings, be sure to reach out to your headquarters, your alumni, the university, or heck, even reach out to me, and I will help you find that missing piece that will put your chapter in a position to be extremely successful going forward. And along those lines, I am going to bring out our next guest, John Hatfield. John is a savvy, innovative leader with extensive experience communicating vision and strategic direction by creating scalable and effective learning solutions with delivery to diverse national and international audiences across all levels of organizations, affiliations, and associations. His ability to streamline organizational production through the restructuring of policies and procedures, operations, finances, and team productivity, this is his calling. John maintains an uncompromising focus on high quality standards and bottom line improvements. Creating and maintaining culture change within companies and organizations, that's what John is passionate about. He's got exceptional academic qualifications, including a Master of Arts in Educational Psychology, Leadership, and College Student Development. In his free time, John enjoys hiking, hitting the gym, adventure, traveling, reading, working with fraternities, and, of course, spending time with his amazing kids. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Listen, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. You are just a wealth of information. So I am just so pumped that you are on the Fraternity Foodie Podcast today, because I know that inside of you is all of this great information for all of our college student listeners that are in fraternities and sororities today. So I am pumped about this interview. Thank you so much for being on the show. Let's go back to your undergraduate experience, because you decided on Kansas State University, and I'm wondering, why did you end up choosing Kansas State?
I've thought about that several times. So this is going to be kind of crazy. So when my parents went to Oklahoma State, and so somewhere growing up, then I kind of gravitated to Kansas State, and I kind of liked their athletic programs and kind of who they were, more relational than some of the other institutions I went to. And so when I went and visited universities, that's the thing that grabbed me, was basically they were just more relational, and the campus was beautiful, and that it was that connect relationally that caused me to go there and not choose the University of Kansas.
Got it. I just stick it to them a little bit. I love it. That's great. I love the honesty. That is very, very good. Now, you were extremely involved as a student there. I mean, you ended up joining a ton of organizations, including Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity. So what made you want to join SAE?
I think once again, when I looked at different fraternities in the recruitment process, then probably once again, what grabbed me is they made me feel like I could belong. And so there was an aspect, they accepted me just the way I was, and that was very attractive to me. I was an athlete, so they were really good athletically, and I liked that, but it was just the relational connect. I felt like I mattered and they wanted me.
Yeah, I talked about that at Salem State University a couple of days ago when I was working with their fraternity and sorority system. And I talked about Maslow's hierarchy and the fact that love and belonging is right in there. And that is what fraternities and sororities deliver. And I admitted on stage, I am not going to be successful in college unless I have love and belonging. The
Mhm.
academics for me was easy. That was not the difficult part. The difficult part was going to a school with 30,000 students and being overwhelmed at the sea of people and not understanding how I can integrate with 30,000 students. I mean, it's just, I don't even know where to begin. But the fraternity, if I can get in a group of 60 to 70 guys, I can figure that out. I can manage how to develop relationships in a smaller structure where I have that love and belonging, and I have people that are looking out for me, that care about me, that are, happy that I came over to the house, and they're going to miss me if I don't show up. Like that belonging was critical for me as a student, and I would have dropped out if not for that love and belonging.
Yeah, I think when I talk with fraternity audiences all over the nation, one thing that where it gets really quiet with these young men is when I say, "Are you lonely?"
Yeah.
And I look at them and I go, "I know you're lonely." And one of the reasons you are joining a fraternity is because you want to connect with other men for a lifetime of networking. But you can even be in this fraternity and still be lonely.
Hmm.
So what does that look like, and what does brotherhood look like in that aspect? But I believe the bottom line is men are lonely, and loneliness really takes us to some bad places if that continues. Because of course we all know it can take us to depression. It takes us to a terrible self-image sometimes, or even feeling like I'm invisible. No one even knows or cares that I'm here. And of course, then that can lead down to, a lot of other, terrible things, whether it's, you know, how to try to fix that loneliness through medicating ourselves in a variety of ways. And then of course, it brings us into that whole concept that we deal with in suicide. So
Yeah, you're so right.
yeah,
I think if you
yeah.
look at the number of close relationships that young men have, and you look at it over a chart, you graph that over the last 20 years, you'll see that the number of really close connections that these men have now today is zero. And so that's why fraternity, in my opinion, and I'm sure you share this opinion as well, this is why it's so critical. Because if that is true, then there's no way they're going to achieve their highest potential without that love and belonging, and the brotherhood that exists within these fraternities. So I do think it's critical if we want to have success within higher ed. Now, you're a national leadership culture consultant. I know you've done work with Beta Sigma Psi, SAE, Fiji. I mean, what kinds of things do you work on at this yearly national leadership conference that you have in Denver, Colorado?
I would say there's two or three things. I love culture. I believe culture is the values, the rituals, the beliefs, those things that create a community. But the bottom line, I believe, in culture is what are the accepted and the rejected behaviors of that community. And so if you don't understand what those are, or by default that is leading you versus by design, the reality is you have a culture. It is there. And, Brene Brown, I love it. She uses the phrase, it's how we do things around here. And so how do you do things around here? And I don't believe, what I see is, I don't believe you can change culture by a workshop or a weekend. It will not happen. Culture is, to change a culture, when I've been involved in that, is that consistency, that daily, weekly interaction. And so what's hard is a national office can't provide that.
Mhm.
So if fraternity goes rogue, they take them off for 4 years to reset the culture. That's all perfect. They come in with a workshop, but that's it. That's all they got, because they just don't have the manpower or the finances then to be on top of that, on keeping that culture moving in the direction that they want. So that's where you kind of have to have people come in and fill that position to do that. And for SAE, when I walked in about 15 years ago at Kansas State, I mean, their GPA was a 2.4. They were selling drugs out of the front foyer, and they were on probation for hazing. It was a complete mess. I went to the local and said, you're going to lose this chapter within 3 or 4 years. The fittest will survive according to Darwin, and this is not the fittest. It will not survive. And fraternities that cannot make this change are going by the wayside. And so we need to throw guys out, and then we need to get in here. Do you have the finances to do it? They did. Threw out 44 guys. There were 17 left. And so then we started, and part of the start in the academic was, one, they went dry, so couldn't have alcohol in the house. Number two is, at that point, you can't take anybody below a 3.0 GPA from high school. So that started, and then creating the dynamic of the academic strategy. And so now that house in the last 4 years, 110 guys consistently, first, second, or third in GPA. Last semester, 110 guys, 3.57. You can't get into that fraternity below a 3.5 in high school. So we created a new culture, a new paradigm, but it didn't happen in a year. That thing took about 4 to 5 years to turn it, and then to sustain it, then to continue to sustain that is the dynamic that, that needs to be there. So I hope that gives an example of that culture.
Absolutely. I think that's a great example. And yeah, I've served on a number of membership reviews in the past, one locally with hazing, and they never lost their charter. We basically threw out the guys that were responsible for the hazing and rebuilt it, and they still have their charter. I think, truth be told, they're probably still a little bit upset that, we ended up throwing out a bunch of their guys. But at the end of the day, the charter has always been on the wall. They've never lost their charter, and now they're more successful than ever. And we were able to get that good culture. And so sometimes you have to go through that process. And I would argue that fraternities should really be looking at the values of the men that they have, and do this as a regular part of business. Don't even wait until you have a 2.4 GPA and there's drug dealing going on in the foyer of your house. Let's just start it proactively now, just to do a review and say, does everybody really share the values of SAE? Yes or no? And let's have those half-hour meetings with every brother to be sure that that's the case. So.
Well, I think what is happening today within the fraternity and sorority life system, just nationwide, that's been occurring about the last 10 years is we've really lost our purpose, our reason for existence. And so there's been a shift away from that. And then part of it is what's happened is we have a lot of chapters that their purpose, their reason for existence is just a social or a drug club. Yeah. And, that's why they exist. And so to bring that back to, okay, our purpose and our reason for existence is this, and then to have the leaders with the character and the integrity and the vision, then to make that happen on a daily basis, to take that turn is rough, because you have to be on location. So it either has to be an advisor or somebody like that. Once again, nationals they just don't have the manpower. Right. And so I hear a lot of alumni that get angry at nationals. Well, why aren't they doing this and that? And I just go, they just don't have the manpower. And they don't have the finances. And it's almost like you've got to think outside the box in a new paradigm here. Perhaps maybe 6 fraternities at, Missouri or Texas A&M or, Vanderbilt, maybe 6 or 7 fraternities band together and say, you know what, we're just going to hire somebody, and all they're going to do is leadership development and character development within our 6 or 7 chapters. And that's that person's full-time job. That's all they do. We want him engaged with our men and developing them. We talk about leadership development and that we're, like the premier leader developer. And I just say kind of bull. I'm not sure we are anymore. I think we've lost that. And in my opinion, throwing somebody into the swimming pool and saying that's leadership development and they have to swim or sink, that's not leadership development at all. We're doing a great disservice. Now, there's aspects where he needs to swim or sink, but you got to be in there and jump in the pool with him. But that's just not happening.
Yeah.
It's lost. We've
You're
lost
right.
it.
I mean, the fraternity and sorority headquarters, I mean, have very limited resources. So I agree with you there. Very, very difficult to do that with limited resources. And a lot of the universities, they typically don't have a large staff to be able to manage all of that either. So you're really kind of depending on the alumni volunteers to supplement all of the things that we're doing from a university level. The fraternities and sororities, listen, let's be honest. I mean, they do educational programming. So, hopefully at least once a year, there is some kind of leadership conference where they are getting that skills training and other areas. But you're right, we need to do more. And the only solution that I see would be to do that with the alumni in place.
You enjoy, or what?
Hey, so John, I had another question for you. I mean, talk to us about the yearly international service experience in Nicaragua. How did that come about?
Yeah, you know what? I really love international work. And so I went to Zambia and worked at the University of Zambia in Lusaka with students for a year. I did the same at the University of Uganda for a summer. And so kind of international is in my blood. And my kids all studied abroad in college. So I wanted to create an experience for fraternity men that would challenge their thinking, their ethnicity, to challenge their multicultural dynamic, and to put that together with service. And so we went with a group called Amigos for Christ in Nicaragua. And most of it is led by the indigenous. So they lead us and we come and do what they want, which I really like that concept. And so we would go in and we would build water lines. You dig about 4 foot deep, bringing water into villages that just had dirty, terrible water. The death rate of baby till about 5 was extremely high because of the contamination of the water. So there was an aspect where you just felt like you were doing what was right as a good human. And we would go in for a week and kind of work our tails off. And then we also built education structures for that. And then, and then we built like bathrooms from scratch out in the middle of nowhere. So we bring in, a bathroom on the dirt floor out in the middle of nowhere. So it was a great experience for the men. It was just good, the conversation of what they're learning, and try to start that vision of you can be involved in this the rest of your life, in your community, with your career, or with your church or your synagogue or mosque, whatever it is, you can be involved in that. And so it's been really good.
That's an incredible service learning opportunity that I think every fraternity man, every sorority woman should really try to be a part of something like that, because the lessons can go so far. And I really believe that we really take for granted all the things that we have in this country. I mean, running water, flushing toilets, right? I mean, this is not something that is a thing all over the world. And so when you get a chance to actually work and bring those things to a community, you see just how life-changing that is for the community. And now suddenly, the health of the people who live there suddenly skyrockets, and they can do things that ordinarily wouldn't be possible without that work. And so I think you're really setting them up for a lifetime of success, not only, but also just giving back to their community and helping others who are less fortunate. And I think that really is our role as fraternity men and sorority women. So I love that you're doing that. And you also have this yearly national recruiting conference that you do in St. Louis, Missouri. How does this national recruiting conference go?
You bet. It's really good. What I do is just bring in guys for a day and a half. And then we try to focus on just the dynamics of just recruitment and how to be better recruiters, to try to equip and train them to do a better job. And so, things that we talk about is, part of it, you must know your brand. You got to know who you are. If you don't know who you are, then you can't sell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so just working on that, like what makes you different from any other fraternity on your campus. And if you don't understand that, then you can't sell yourself. You can't recruit. Other dynamics of your story has power. So tell your story and why you joined this fraternity and what it means to you. And each story is different, but each story has power. Another is, how do you welcome that young man who walks in your door? Are you cognizant of that? And what is it that you will do that makes him feel like he belongs, that he matters, that he's accepted, that you're interested in him, and you're trying to figure out a right fit? So we talk about that. We do a lot of scenarios, and so we get them up front, and they have to one guy is the potential and one is the member. And so then we give them a topic that they have to talk about, and then we critique them. And so we do that again and again and again. And from that, they become more confident. So probably a big thing too, is we talk about selling, and selling is informing and persuading men about who you are and what you have to offer that appeals to who they are and what they are looking for. That's where the magic happens. But you must understand that. The other is we talk about, what is that potential looking for? So do you understand what he's even looking for? Because if you don't get that, then you miss every time. Another is we talk about, how do you talk to a parent? So parents are really coming into the picture and involved in the recruitment process more than ever before. Well, a parent's questions is completely different than a potential's questions. So you better understand and be able to answer those questions. And let me just give you a live example. 3 weeks ago, I'm in my office at Kansas State University, and parents come in with a young man, and he's looking at Kansas State. So as I dialogue with them, they inform me that they've just been to the University of Arkansas and looking at Greek life. Next, they went to Okie State and once again looking at Greek life, and now Kansas State University. So they've narrowed it down to 3 institutions where he's going to go to school. They're making a decision based upon the fraternity, sorority life, culture, and office.
Wow.
That's where they're making the decision. I tell you what, this is happening more and more around the country. And then these parents, they like SAE. One thing that we do, we have a recruitment event in Kansas City, and the event is for the parents. So the potential and all the parents come to the Mission Hills Country Club. And so the men do a whole program of who we are. They first come in, they have interaction for 30, 40 minutes, just talking, walking around. After that, they do a program. The House Corps president and the advisor are there. And so then they speak also, and then the men speak. They have a PowerPoint. And then after that, it's answering questions that parents have. And then after that, then there's another, 15, 20, 30 minutes before they leave. I'll tell you what, they kill it. They kill it. They kill it. And I put together that program about 8 years ago. And I'm telling you, you sell that parent, boom, you have that man. It's just that it just goes hand in glove of what's taking place there. But part of it is, where are we creatively coming up with new ideas? How do we understand the current culture of the parent or what the potential is looking for? And, that to me, it's just part of being on the cutting edge of recruitment.
Yeah, that's a pure genius move, John. I love that you're doing that at SAE, and that you're even teaching recruitment, because a lot of our knowledge about recruiting in person is all gone now that a lot of these members have all graduated, and they've been doing virtual recruitment for the last 2 years. They really don't know the basic blocking and tackling. So the fact that you're helping there is fantastic. I love that you're recruiting the parents, because you're absolutely right. If you can sell the parent, they will write a check for dues on the spot if they understand that this leadership position is going to help them with a network in order to get hired and get a job after graduation, and they make that connection, the parents will write the check for the dues on the spot. That's not the issue. But selling the parents is, takes a little bit of skill. And I'm so happy to see that they're doing it well. I mean, clearly it works in college football. So, why aren't we doing it in fraternity and sorority? We should be. So I'm glad to see that you are.
And I agree. It's like, that's a perfect example of, different football teams and then how they recruit, what they go after and how they do it. And a lot of it is that parent.
Absolutely.
The training, the recruitment training that I do in Chicago every January is with Beta Sigma Psi. So Beta Sig brings all the recruitment chairs, teams, whoever wants to come, and they pay for that. That is a free conference that Beta Sigma Psi does for them. All they have to pay is to get there, but everything else is paid for free because they value it and they see we've got to train our men. So
love it. Absolutely love it. You're also the CEO of Brave Man Society. What is your mission at Brave Man Society, and how do you reach your audience?
You bet. So you can go on to my webpage, Brave Man Society. On that webpage, there's just a lot of information. I have published articles just for men and articles for fraternity men. So a lot of fraternity men will go onto the webpage or onto my Instagram. But I created that because I feel like there is a glut in what masculinity is in our culture. And we need to be bringing boys into manhood and then helping men with issues of manhood and masculinity and leadership and dynamics of just where fear influences our decision making, and helping men to choose to call out their brave and enter those arenas of fear, whether it's arenas professionally or relationally or privately, and helping them do that. So yeah, I've loved every bit of it. Currently I'm about 3/4 done with a book with Greenleaf Press out of Austin. And so that book will come out, but yeah, just that whole concept of, I think within our culture, we've lost the understanding of masculinity and it's been attacked. And we just need to understand that concept again and then infuse it into our men.
Yeah, I can't wait to read that book. You're going to have to let me know as soon as it's out. I will pick it up immediately. And, you started talking about your position at Kansas State. You're the interim director of fraternity and sorority life there. The university is bringing FSL back under the university after 4 years apart, really, in essence, to create belonging and community on campus. So talk to us about this new FSL initiative, why it's so important at Kansas State to address this loneliness issue.
Yeah, I think what happened was about 4 or 5 years ago, Kansas State's council made a decision to throw around 300 organizations off campus so that they were not affiliated with them, believing that would protect them from any form of lawsuit. So it was really not a very good decision at all. A few other places around the country did it, but they led that kind of initiative. I think then they've come back and realized, all these organizations are off campus. We have no authority over them. We can't tell them what to do. They are totally independent. So there's some good things about that, but there's also, as we know, bad things about that. And then to try to manage that outside of the university's resources is a little rough. So the university came to us in the last year and said, we made a big mistake and those lawyers are gone now. And would you consider coming back under our umbrella with us? And we would love to carve out what that would look like. And so then discussions started taking place about 6 months ago. And so that's what's going to happen. We'll come back under their umbrella. And in that, I'm the interim director. So they will be hiring a director. Search will go out nationally here in about a month, 6 weeks. They'd like to have a director in January in place. And then all of that's coming under the university. So I think they're just seeing, I mean, from the fraternity sorority life office side, we're seeing there's aspect of the university that we need that helps us. And I think the university also sees there's aspects of our student body of fraternity sorority life that they need. One thing that's really working well at our favorite Kansas State, our president was a fraternity man, our dean of students was a fraternity man, just key positions were fraternity people. They've investigated 80% of the giving at Kansas State University comes from someone who is Greek. That's just unbelievable. So they understand that. It's kind of like, okay, how do we work together? How can we make you better? And how can we make this flourish? And so there's just lots of good collaboration, good communication between the university and the fraternity sorority life alumni and advisors. So it's just going to be a good win-win situation when all of that is done. And so I know it's a little bit unique that we have so many top administrators who were Greek, but it really plays into our favor because we don't get a lot of heat from our administration. It's more, how do we help you? You have about 3,500 students in our campus. Our student body president is pretty much always Greek. Our multicultural student body president is Greek. Our Senate and our student government is highly Greek. So there's an aspect where the fraternity sorority life is having significant impact on the whole university. And so I think they recognize that. And so it's like, what can they do to make us even better?
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think it's really important for our listeners to hear that because we have seen that happen, various instances around the country where fraternities, sororities, other student organizations are basically kicked out from underneath the university umbrella. And then just like you said, to your point, I think later on down the road, a few years later, they're scratching their head going, this really wasn't a good idea at all. So I would much rather see, listen, I'm not sitting here saying that the fraternity and sorority system is perfect. It's not perfect. There are things that we need to work on and correct. But I do believe that the way to do that is a healthy partnership between the fraternities and sororities and the universities working together for student success. I think nothing positive happens when it's outside of the umbrella. And so I'm really glad to see that Kansas State came to that decision and that you're working with them. And then we will be together with them, with a director of fraternity and sorority life in January. That sounds absolutely wonderful. And thank you for all the work that you've done in order to enable that to be a reality. I think is fantastic. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is this a concept that you talk about called chapter shifting, which is knowing how to facilitate change. And you think that it's going to be the single most important leadership quality for every fraternity and sorority. So do you think reasonably that organizations that are 100 years old, 150 years old in some cases, can actually adapt and change the way that they do business going forward?
Oh, well, that is like the $1 million question. And then it's just, that is kind of where we're at. Right now, what I see, I'll give you an example of Kansas State. So I've been there about 10 years. In that time, first, they lost Delta Tau Delta. Next was Kappa Sig. Third was Sigma Nu. Fourth was TEAC. Fifth was ATO. Sixth, we may have another one that we may be losing.
Wow.
So you have to ask the question. These are all very foundational, historical, solid national fraternities, and they are gone. And so the question is, you either adapt or change and survive, or you do not adapt and change. And you must rethink what is Greek. And so it's just an example of the fittest will survive. And then how do you define the new normal of what it means to be the fittest as a fraternity? And these are examples of they did not survive. They couldn't chapter shift. They didn't have the alumni that understands what that looks like. And it's like, you can't keep creating a 70s, 80s, 90s paradigm. That does not work. It's just, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so then they lost these major fraternities. And so then it's that concept of, okay, what is the new Greek supposed to look like? And what is going to be a new normal? And if you can't make it, the reality is you're just going to die. Yeah. And so I think it's happening all over the country. I think we're in a free fall on it. And it will take really strong leadership and dedicated leadership and consistency from the local level, because the nationals are doing everything they know. They're doing everything they know, but it's not going to occur unless it's at a local level. It's the local level that the understanding of culture and a new normal and what it looks like, and leave some of that stuff from the past behind. And it's just going to look different. And that's good. It's not bad. But all of that, the manpower, the lion's share is at the local. And we don't know how to train and work with the local for that. And that's the missing piece, because it won't happen any other way, because you have to be in there. And then all those advisors need to be on the same page of the movement and direction of what they want, the accepted and the rejected behaviors. And you have to go, that doesn't work. And this is what's going to work and where we're going. And then there's pushback. Oh, that's not going to work, or, that's not who we are. Or it's like, there's always going to be a pushback, and you have to push through that and go, no. But I think we have not figured out, how do we come to the local and we got to spend a lot of time with them, understanding the culture and what it looks like, the systems that they must get in place for sustainability, and their convictions and the commitment on that. And we have not figured that out.
Yeah,
that's just, we just haven't figured it out.
No, we haven't. You're absolutely right. I think the key is, and I started it right from the very top, it's that local alumni leadership. If we can get that in place, that is the key marker that I see for successful chapters all over the country. If you want to be successful, if you want to be sustainable, you got to have really good local alumni leaders in place. That's the only way. There's just not enough resources from the headquarters. There's not enough resources at the university level. It's got to be the alumni that see the benefit and are invested and going to weekly chapter meetings and solving problems. Because if it's just students asking each other, other college students, for advice, you can imagine what that advice looks like. It's not good. And so we got to have those alumni in place. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. I mean, this has just been incredibly helpful, I'm sure, for everybody who's listening, whether you are an undergraduate, you're an alumnus, or even you're a university administrator. I think you've really outlined some really, really good next steps on where we need to go with fraternity and sorority. Now, you know that we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I mean, that's my weakness. If there's anything, it's good food. And so the next time I'm in Manhattan, Kansas, not to be confused with Manhattan, New York City, where should I go for a great meal in town?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 or 3 places to come when you're in Manhappiness, or the Little Apple, as we call it. So if you're in Aggieville, right next to our campus, then you need to go to Taco Luce. It's Kansas Mex mix, and it is freaking the best. If you're in downtown Manhappiness, then there's a place called Bourbon and Baker that is off the chart. And if you want to go high end, go to the Wine Dive. It has the largest selection of wine west of the Mississippi.
Wow, those are all great suggestions. I always like supporting the local restaurants and local stores. So I know you've done a great deed here in sharing all of those. So that way all of our listeners can go and flood them with business and make sure that they stay open and continue to serve great food to the students locally there in Manhattan, Kansas. So that's fantastic. All right. So if our student listeners or even our alumni advisors have questions for you based on all the things that you talked about here today, where is the best place for them to go and to connect with you?
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 places. One, you can just go to my personal email. It's just jrhfield, Field, @gmail.com. I'm fine. You can text me. That number is 719-233-1668. Just tell me kind of who you are, because I get a lot of texts because I speak all over the country. And I return those. So those would be 2 pretty easy places to find me.
That's fantastic. John, thank you so much for the work that you do in working with our fraternity men all over the country. Thank you for the work that you're doing at Kansas State and bringing back all those fraternities and sororities underneath the umbrella at the university. I think that's going to be a really, really positive development for the university. And I know that took a lot of work and a lot of time and somebody with the vision to bring all of these people back together again. So I know that that's a lot of work there, and all the work that you're doing at Brave Man Society. I think we do need to put some of that focus back on our young men and make sure that they have the support structures that are in place to ensure that they are successful long term, and that we're defeating this loneliness that a lot of men today are feeling. So I really appreciate all of your honesty. It's just so refreshing, and can't wait to work with you a little bit more going forward. So thank you for the time.
I was going to say too, just so you know, I've read both books, and I had our staff read those this summer.
Yeah.
They've been very helpful for us, and so just plugging that, you should read those books. I had all our staff do that, and I'm having incoming staff with our IFC and Panhellenic then read also. So thank you for that contribution.
That is fantastic. These are the books. It's called From Letters to Leaders. You can pick up that series on Amazon. And here's a little bit of news for you. Our team is working on book number 3. So the 3rd book is going to be coming out. We're going to be talking about how you can leverage the fraternity and sorority experience and make that applicable in the real world. So we really can't wait for that one. That's what all the students have been asking us for. So we have been working really, really hard on that. And so book number 3 will come out. I appreciate you just, sharing that with your team. I think these books are really important. I think college students just love them because it's just straight talk and it's a lot of stuff that they can put into place immediately. So I think that, the feedback we're getting from the students is, hey, we absolutely love these books. Keep pumping them out because we need more and more resources like this to help our students. So I appreciate the plug. That's been great. And to our student listeners and anybody who's listening here today, we hope you've enjoyed this conversation with John. If you have, please make sure that you like it. Please make sure that you share it on social media with other folks, so that way they get a chance to hear all of John's great wisdom that he shared with us here today. And we hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much, and we are going to see you next time.